And welcome to Chapter 1 in this VTC tutorial, getting you ready for the 7298. Just to reiterate something I mentioned in the introduction here, this first brief chapter here, probably more than any other chapter throughout this entire tutorial, will just include some talking points. And those talking points will help you identify some of the aspects that go into network infrastructure security design. As we start to take a look at this topic, we need to first analyze our existing security needs of our organization, of our company, or of our network. And one of the things that we first ask ourselves is why bother? And well, why bother securing data? That should be pretty self-explanatory. You should be able to answer that in your own words. But very simply, data is the backbone of most any organization. Certainly, even if you're the author of a tutorial, the data that you create has to be protected against loss, against theft, against all kinds of things, so that the author of that tutorial can make a living from his work. But any organization really needs to secure in some way and protect its data. For example, if you don't have the billing information of your company secure and that data has integrity, then you're going to have a hard time collecting on any outstanding invoices, and therefore that company is going to go out of business in short order. So that's just one example of data that needs to be protected, that you need to have a plan for ensuring that that data is available, what people owe you, what you have sold to people. As you start to look at the data in your organization, what is stored on what computers and what servers, you need to think about categorizing the data. And generally, you can look at data and put it into or define it in terms of its purpose, in terms of its integrity, and in terms of the sensitivity of that data. So for each piece of data, for each collection of data that an organization generates, it will have a purpose, it will have integrity, and it will have sensitivity levels associated with it. For example, you need to determine how data is used. What will happen if the data is unavailable? Example, the billing information. If that data is unavailable, then the company is unable to collect on its debts, and the company will go out of business. So it's important to identify the purpose of data during any risk analysis process. You also need to determine the integrity, or how important the integrity of the information is. If I send out a bill and your name is misspelled, that might get annoying, but it's not going to affect really the bottom line. If, however, the information on the invoice is wrong, if I'm only billing half of what I'm supposed to be billing, then again the company runs into a great deal of problems. So that is just, again, examples of determining how important the integrity of a piece of data is. And then finally, the sensitivity of data. What will happen if the data becomes compromised, if other people see it? If someone sees your billing list, is that going to affect the amount of billing? Maybe not, but if you're dealing with top secret government contracts, or you're dealing with sensitive financial information, or you're dealing with health information, something like that, then certainly protecting that data is something that can get you either fired or lose the contract or things of that nature. So any piece of information that you are concerned with securing, you need to examine its purpose, its integrity, how important its integrity is, and then finally look at what happens if that data is compromised in any way. So, as we start this, then you need to define, after you've identified the data that needs to be secured, you need to define policies and procedures. And as we start to examine this, it's important to define the difference between policy and procedure, because these things are used pretty much interchangeably, but there is a slight difference. A policy is a statement of required behavior. What needs to happen for a certain security practice in our network? The procedure is a method, or really the button pushing. It's a dictation of how the policy is to be carried out. So if we have a policy that says we want to have strong passwords in our network, the procedure would say we create a group policy object that defines a maximum or a minimum password length of, say, 6 characters, or we define complexity requirements. We build that into our password procedures. So the policy is, again, a written statement of what we would like. It sometimes is an ideal. It sometimes can be forced on you by other people, by the way. Like if you are dealing with a government contract, you say, look, you have to have 128-bit encryption on the data that leaves your network, for example, or data that comes into our network. The procedure is, here's how we're going to make this happen. So difference between policies and procedures. Then some considerations as we analyze existing security policies and procedures is that we need to ask ourselves several questions. Again, this goes into any planning venture, endeavor that you take on, is that you ask lots of good questions. So of the data, of the policies and procedures that you analyze in your business, you want to ask yourself, does a current policy meet business needs? Do written policies, the things that you have in your mind or that other people have imposed on you, do they define exact implementation details? In other words, do they have the procedures already attached to those policies? Other questions we ask as we analyze existing security policies is that we ask, can the policy even be enforced with technology? Is the technology within our grasp? Do we have to get outside help to help implement this technology? Does it exist? Can we implement it without buying additional hardware and or software? And then finally, what are the relative importance of our security policies? Not every policy in your organization is going to have the same value, the same ranking of importance. So we want to make sure that we, just like if we build a to-do list for the course of our day, typically we want to do the most important things on our list first, and then if we get to the other things, then we get to them, great. But we need to have these things done in order to get through our day. So those are the kinds of evaluations that we need to place on our security policies. What are the things, what is the data that this business cannot live without, or if it was compromised, our business would collapse? Those are obviously going to be at the top of your security policy list, and therefore we need to define exact procedural steps to make those things happen. So again, starting to look at some of the security design considerations in this first chapter.